You got barbecue back there, and you didn't invite me. Hurt my feelings.
Welcome back to another episode of Dynasty Theory here at DD Fantasy Football. Remember, we got code Theory. Check out ddfantasyfootball.com. Get 50% off. I think it's either the $15 tier or the GOAT tier. And then we got the link in the episode description below. So when we talk about the War Machine, when we talk about the Trinity tool, we're talking about the Discord conversations we've been having. That's how you get in and get access to all of that. All right. What's going on, Dan?
Man, fresh off another wild week 7 of NFL football and enjoying a little heat wave here in northeastern Pennsylvania. It's probably similar to you there in Pittsburgh, JB. So good to see my boys tonight.
Yeah, I'm ready for really ready for fall. And I think we're going to get it like next week. I think we're going to hit the 70s here, and then it's going to come back down. I'm looking forward to my grass dying outside so I don't have to cut it again. Like, I'll see you in April, buddy. Anyway, what's going on, Mitch?
What's going on? Like, this is all I have to do all week now. Both of my kids are out of football. When you do that like every single day for 3 months, now we don't know what to do tonight. Like, I came home and the wife was like, hey, what are you doing? I have the podcast, and then we have nothing planned until like Sunday. I'm like, this is an amazing life. I could do this more often.
I have one more week, Mitch, and then I join you. One more week of football.
Nice.
All right. So we had a few different directions this show was going to go tonight. We had a list of some more dynasty buys that we're looking at, various price points like we did last week. It was good to see T. Higgins pop off. I was happy with that one. And that was the guy that both Dan and Mitch wanted to talk about last week. So it was good for the whole team. Team morale is high right now. But it might come down a little bit based on these early conversations we're going to have tonight. Brandon Aiyuk, boys. What, Dan? What do you want?
Even before Aiyuk, man, I just thought, Zay Flowers went out with an ankle injury. I'm hoping he comes back. Mike Evans just went to the locker room. So we're back at 1,000 already tonight.
And again, I always say, if you're listening Tuesday night, these episodes get released 7 p.m. Eastern time. We record on Mondays. So sometimes we throw in some things for Monday Night Football. So add them to the list. But Brandon Aiyuk, he's going to be out for the rest of the season. It sounds like it's ACL and MCL things. And it kind of goes with the show here, but Mitch and I completed a trade not too long ago, and we'll get to that in a minute. But let me throw some things out, as I like to do. So Brandon Aiyuk, weeks 1 through 6. Let's remove week 7 because he was out after the first quarter. He was tied for wide receiver 55 in per game PPR scoring, okay? 1 game over 10 points. Trinity score. This is where we talk about the Trinity tool that's available at ddfantasyfootball.com. Wide receiver 46. Wide receiver 60 in air yard share. Just below DeMarcus Robinson. So you know you're in good company, guys, when you're mentioned with DeMarcus Robinson. Target share just under 22%, so that wasn't all that bad. And then 1.72 yards per route run. You look at the yards per route run and you're like, okay, we always like to see it above 2. But this is kind of who he's been. Last year, over 3, but that was an outlier. 2022, 1.97. 2021, 1.65. 2020, 1.79. All of those they're okay. Like nothing catastrophic, but I think there's a lot of kind of negative. You'll look at this negatively for Brandon Aiyuk, but outside of last year, it's kind of who he was. 4.1 yards after the catch per reception. That's not good. I don't even need to give a rank. Yards per target, lowest in his career outside of his rookie year. Catch percentage, lowest of his career by almost 10%. So, Dan, Brandon Aiyuk gets paid, laughing all the way to the bank, has a lackluster first month and a half of the season, and now he is out. Are you buying the injury discount? Are you selling low now because nobody's going to pay the previous price tag, of course?
Man, I feel like you just, that high we were on to start the show. You got a little knife and you put it in my tires. There's a lot to unravel here, but I'll keep it simple. I think, as you break down all the analytics there and the trendy score and, the declining numbers, I think, hey, if we're following that weeks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think that's good data for our listeners to have, feedback there to be following these trendy scores and be following, the content of DD Fantasy Football to maybe have gotten off of a Brandon Aiyuk before something like this injury happened. Like if you were following and trending with those numbers and move something sooner, awesome for you, because you're not stuck with the Aiyuk shares that we may have, and now we're in limbo. I think there's a little bit of a product of his holdout and a little bit of a product of his just crappy attitude and, just preparation in for this season. I think he's still a talented dude, but now he's a talented dude with a very serious ACL injury that's going to put him out the rest of this year and a chunk of next year. So if I could get out and get something that could help me contend this year, and that's going to just kind of, hold some value beyond this year, I'm selling. I know I got to temper expectations. Not going to get what we would have got weeks ago, but I would try to sell if I have him.
My uncle earlier, he was talking about like Facebook comments, and he said that people in there, again, here in Pittsburgh, and, Pittsburgh fans, some of them, well, you'll see based on this comment, they said, oh my gosh, thank goodness we didn't trade for Brandon Aiyuk because he would have gotten injured. Do you listen to yourself? Do you think? Wait a minute here. Anyway, that's the way some people in Pittsburgh are kind of digesting this. So good thing, everybody. So Mitch, let me ask you a question. This has nothing to do with Facebook comments.
That's good.
So Brandon Aiyuk, we talk about, he wasn't producing for fantasy purposes. A lot of people, they're looking to move him, but like he wasn't producing before. A lot of people, because of that, weren't necessarily paying the price. I think a lot of people that are looking to move Brandon Aiyuk, and this typically happens like immediately following an injury, happened with Rashee Rice not long ago. People kind of have that expectation, well, I should still be able to get this. And then you see a lot of people just kind of stuck with them on the roster.
That is one way to look at it. But I'm not looking at I'm getting stuck with a 26-year-old Brandon Aiyuk on my roster. I still think he's one of the top 15 good wide receivers in the NFL. Has he had a down year? Absolutely, he has. That whole offense hasn't. I mean, they're putting up yards, they're putting up points, but that offense, I mean, even if you looked at it on Sunday, it's just, it looks off from previous years. And maybe that's just not having Christian McCaffrey there, that workhorse back. I mean, Mason's been amazing. Don't get me wrong there, but McCaffrey just brings that different dimension to one offense. I'm completely okay acquiring Brandon Aiyuk. Like I traded him to you. I've had offers for Brandon Aiyuk that I have on my teams. I'm not going to go out there and trade him like John, anyone in the Discord. John has tiers. Hit up John. He'll let you know all about him, right? But like you have him listed with a JSN. I'm not trading Brandon Aiyuk for JSN. Deontay Johnson, Jordan Addison, Deebo Samuel. I'm not moving him. He will stay on my roster. If I'm contending, he is still staying on my roster. I will find wide receiver points somewhere. I'm not trading him away for that. If you tell me, I've been really trying to get Chris Olave. That's been kind of what I'm trying to go for. Hasn't happened once. And if that's not the case, then fine. I'll just have him on my team.
And to follow up on that, and you kind of looked at it from the other side of the lens here, where like if you are contending, and I think I had 6 shares, I think maybe 7. I moved one to Mitch, and we'll talk about that trade here in a second and how gross it is. And then there's 2 other shares that I'll be moving tomorrow morning. Well, it would have happened already once everybody listens to this episode, but you can't accept until the week rolls over on MFL. But most of my shares are on teams that are contending. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those situations again where I'm not contending because of Brandon Aiyuk.
Exactly.
So technically, you could, stick with him, not sell low, and you're probably going to be okay. But I think it's being calculated in the type of move you're making. But then, like, if it is an ACL and MCL, and there's issues on both of those, he's probably going to be slow to start next year.
Maybe.
And like I'm getting, this is like the Rashee Rice episode all over again, right? And Mitch is always a little bit more willing to go out and test the waters. I'm probably a little bit more willing to move at a discount depending on my roster construction. And Dan, I think it's fair to say, if you're contending, you're willing to move off of these guys. I as you shoo somebody away at the Lamagna household.
That was the Lamar Jackson to Justice Hill touchdown fist bump there. A little DFS special as Justice Hill's in some lineups tonight with Zay on the bench. I really needed that.
Either shooing one of the kids away, or you have an animal and you're like, get out. Okay,
it does happen sometimes. But no, I did hear you there, and I do on a contending roster. Looking at a lot of the trades that you posted tonight, and I do have a share of Aiyuk in a league where my receiving corps is a little bit thin, so I'm gonna look to move. But I sound like I'm aligned with Mitch, man. It's kind of scary. We've been a little bit more aligned in recent episodes. I'm not selling free. I was offered Calvin Ridley and I forget the player today. It wasn't anything that I could remember, so that should tell you something. Calvin Ridley wasn't enough for me to part ways with Aiyuk.
So all right, well, let's get through some of the trades here, and we teased it enough. Let's talk about the trade that Mitch and I did. A 14-team league, start 12. He's not contending. I am contending.
I have your first, and I think I have Dan's first too. I think.
There you go.
Pretty
So
sure.
I moved Brandon Aiyuk for Najee Harris and Tyrone Tracy. And that is so gross, but there's a PPC component. So it was like 0.2 point per carry. It's tiered PPR for running back, wide receiver, tight end. So it's a gross trade, but with my team, the expectation and the way Najee Harris has looked the last 2 weeks, I was okay making it. There's 168 starters in the league, and I'm contending. But that's kind of the price point, and you're going to see here. That's kind of the price point. If you want to move off of Brandon Aiyuk, it's probably right around that range, to be honest with you. And again, I don't need the comments to tell me how gross that trade is. I know.
That's a fun one.
I won. That's all that matters.
That's a fun one, though. I like that for both of you. I really do. Like I think Ayuk's that, in his prime, talented receiver that once he comes back, Mitch knows he's going to have this, top 20 echelon receiver. And JB, if I'm aligned where I says, hey, if I'm contending, give me some players I'm going to feel good about. Najee's looking really good right now. He's on a contending team. He's going to give you a running back that's going to help you compete this year. I think he has enough gas in the tank where he's still going to be helping you for another year or two. And then Tyrone Tracy gives you that upside guy that just takes the trade over the top enough to say, you know what, all right, I'll roll the dice. So like that for both of you.
But is that a realistic expectation that Brandon Aiyuk comes back as a top 24 receiver? I don't think so. Oh. I don't think so.
Dude, it's an ACL. Like, we see this every time there's an injury, and we hear, oh, sell this guy because he tore his ACL, and it's like then he comes back 8 months later and he's fine.
So like between both of you, Mitch is probably gonna have to be a little more patient than he wants, because we do see those guys come back a little slow from it. So like maybe next year it doesn't happen as quick as Mitch wants. But San Francisco invested him. I mean, they just pay that guy a boatload of money, so they're willing to be patient. It's a good organization. He's gonna be back. So I think Mitch is right, but just maybe not as quick as Mitch hopes.
Fine. I'm just saying, I think 2023 is more that outlier season than the norm.
Dun, dun, dun.
I'm just saying. And just thank goodness the Steelers didn't trade for him, because we didn't want to take on that bummed ACL anyway. All right. So let's see. Dan, Brandon Aiyuk or Michael Pittman, PPR?
Pittman's the kind of guy that, hey, stud receiver, even though we know that Colts quarterback situation's a little rocky, so he's more of a stud receiver depending on who's throwing to him. But I would roll the dice with a guy like Pittman I like, and that is healthy right now. Well, sort of healthy.
Mitch?
Not Pittman. No. I'm trying to look. I think he's broke 10 PPR points twice this year.
You need Joe Flacco.
Three times?
So one more time than Brandon Aiyuk did. Good.
Exactly. I mean, that's not enough for me.
And it's funny because I mentioned the 2 trades that are going to be going through tomorrow morning on Tuesday. One of them is my Brandon Aiyuk for Michael Pittman. And it we need Anthony Richardson to frickin' do something here. All right. But
It looks so good.
Hopefully that turns around here. And if it's not Richardson, let's get Flacco back in there to throw the ball to Pittman, and hopefully he can do something. All right, Mitch, I want to start with you on this one. Brandon Aiyuk in a 25 third for Tank Dell and a 25 fourth.
Brandon Aiyuk.
He is firm on Aiyuk, JB. I have Tank Dell in that Pittman class there. I will roll the dice on Dell. I know it hasn't been producing, but he's still running a gazillion routes. He's out there a lot. I think it's a matter of time for Tank Dell breaks.
Until Nico comes back in 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden Tank Dell isn't even a wide receiver. And I love, you guys know I love Tank Dell. I've always, going back early last season, I love Tank Dell. I want a difference maker if I'm moving Brandon Aiyuk.
I align with Mitch on this one. You're not even getting production from Dell right now. As gross as the Najee Harris one is, you're getting production.
Yeah.
And maybe you're not getting production from Michael Pittman as it stands right now, but you're betting on that talent. You're betting on him being healthier than Brandon Aiyuk. And I think early 2025, that Pittman versus Aiyuk could still pay dividends. I just don't know if it's going to be the case with Tank Dell.
We had a good list created, but in the back of my mind, I'm thinking Tank Dell could have been a guy I would have put on the list of dynasty buys right now.
I like Tank Dell, but if I'm moving Aiyuk, it is most likely centered around something that is either going to give me production or I think is going to give me a good start in 2025, whereas Brandon Aiyuk I don't think will. And I don't think Tank Dell fits either of those. Dan, 2 PPR for tight ends. Mark Andrews or Brandon Aiyuk in a 25 second.
Although Mark Andrews did score tonight, two weeks in a row, I lean the Aiyuk side, especially with that 25 second on there. I'll take the young receiver versus the aging tight end who's just not dominating like he once was.
Agreed. I'm going Aiyuk.
See, I agree here as well. 2 weeks ago, you couldn't get a second for Andrews.
What if it was Hawkinson? Knowing that he's coming back in a week.
Man. I think I would lean Hawk.
Okay.
I'm still leaning Aiyuk with that second.
I think I would lean Hawk in 2 PPR, but Andrews again, it's almost at the point it's a free Aiyuk.
Mm-hmm. No, it is. Yeah. That's a hammer for me.
Mitch, Brandon Aiyuk or Bucky Irving?
Brandon Aiyuk.
These are trades that went through. These are from DynastyDaddy.com.
That's fine.
The Tampa Bay running back situation's getting interesting to watch, though.
I can laugh at people's trades, John. That's okay.
No. Let me kind of give context why I was saying that, just to let the listeners know. And if they listen each and every week, they know that we pull the trades from DynastyDaddy.com. It's not just an arbitrary Aiyuk for Bucky. So
you traded Aiyuk for Bucky. I get it.
I didn't. Not yet, at least. So, Dan, where are you going with that? Did you give an answer?
Aiyuk.
Okay. Dan, Aiyuk or Jameson Williams?
Oh, man, it's tempting, but Jameson's really starting to fit that mold of boomer bust guy. And I think I'd hold and stay with Aiyuk.
Same.
And then last one, Mitch, Aiyuk or Dontavian Wicks and a 25 second.
Even if you guarantee me that's the 201, I'm not going to do it. I'm going Brandon Aiyuk.
Yeah, I like Wicks as an athlete. He's getting a little more volume than I anticipated, but I'm not there, so I'm with Aiyuk.
Okay, so I think for the most part, Mitch is willing to trade his house and his family fortunes to acquire every share of Brandon Aiyuk.
Also known as Najee Harris and Tracy.
Yes, Najee Harris, the Sorensen family fortunes. But like, from my perspective overall, like, it's probably going to be easier, like, to tear down from Aiyuk if you are dead set on moving him. That's probably going to be a little bit easier, or go after a player like Pittman, maybe something involving a Chris Olave, where you think their value is going to bounce back, their production is eventually going to kick back into gear. But I think it's going to be really difficult, and this stems from a question in the Discord earlier today, to tear up from Aiyuk for a player that's producing. Like, I don't know if you can do, like, would somebody accept Aiyuk in a playoff first for Brian Thomas right now? I don't know if they would.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I don't, and you're not going to get.
They should, but they won't.
AJ, you're not going to get AJ Brown in a package. With Nico coming back, you're not getting him. Drake London's been producing. You're not getting him in a package, and nobody above. So it's like you're probably going to have more luck to either do a cross-positional pivot or look to move within the tier and possibly find somebody that's not producing and you think they're going to bounce back. Anything else on Brandon Aiyuk before we move on here?
Nope.
Well, this next segment is going to be super quick. I don't have any fancy notes.
Dan had something to say about this, so I'm just going to sit back and listen to whatever Dan had to say.
Oh, well, all right. Well, Deshaun Watson, he tore his Achilles. Dan, when we put together an intro for Dynasty Theory a couple years ago, and in the intro, we had little sound bites from each of us. And Dan's sound bite, for those of you that don't know, was there is too much dysfunction in Cleveland. Here we are. That was probably 3 years ago. 3 years later, not much has changed, Dan.
Man, it's business is picking up here, it seems, with the dysfunction in Cleveland. And, just watching this weekend's games, it's a little less about Deshaun Watson than who we have in this notes. Although I think it was the Scott Fishbowl. Someone cut Deshaun Watson before the game. I'm like, man, they're just cutting a quarterback. There's no starting quarterbacks on the waiver wire. So I went and I picked Watson up just for backup, bye-week depth, just to have him there. And then I got a little creative. I was like, you know what? I'm going to pick up Winston too, being that I have Watson, because I knew he was struggling. And I'm thinking this could change over the upcoming weeks. So I've got Watson and Winston. The game happens. Watson gets hurt. And, of course, Dorian Thompson-Robinson is starting. So I'm starting to think about this. We see Amari Cooper got traded before the week. And I'm just thinking, for our Dynasty listener, like Dynasty Theory listeners, what's this mean for fantasy football in Cleveland? Who's going to get the football? And my takeaways of that game was Dorian Thompson-Robinson stunk. Winston came in there, at least looked better than him. So I'm hoping, like, I don't know why Winston was number 3. I'm trying to figure that out. I'm thinking Winston's going to be the starter moving forward. And then Cedric Tillman was kind of the wide receiver that caught my eye the most during that game. I don't think you're going to see anything much more from Judy. Obviously, the tight end is the stud is really the number one receiver in that offense, Njoku. But Tillman was the guy, like, if he's on your waiver wire, I might just take a deep flyer on him for this year. And Jameis Winston.
The Winston thing, it almost feels like what we saw in New Orleans just a week ago, where Haener came in mid-game, and then they let Rattler start, and Rattler's going to be starting again here if Derek Carr can't go in week 8, So I have about 10% exposure to Jameis Winston. I'm excited to see what that opportunity may or may not look like. In a few situations, I'm probably going to be looking to pivot, find a manager that maybe lost production. They don't have a quarterback that's necessarily helping them. But this kind of goes with the Brandon Aiyuk thing. Like, if somebody lost Deshaun Watson, they weren't competing because of Deshaun Watson. So you're not trying to make up production. Like, typically we talk about like a quarterback injury, and then it's like, okay, target that manager if you have some excess quarterbacks, or maybe if you're not contending and you want to see if you can get something, a package that makes sense or something like that. But like the teams that I lost to Deshaun Watson, I'm probably not necessarily rushing to go trade for a quarterback, and I know there's some folks that are, if anybody gets injured, anybody's not producing, they go out and they're like, all right, I'm going to buy low. You don't need to buy low on Deshaun Watson. People are still moving. There were trades that went through post Achilles for 25 third. Just keep your third. You don't have to spend if I go to the supermarket and there is
where's he going with this, Mitch?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
If there's chicken with flies and crud all over it, but it's 10 cents, I'll pay the $3 a pound for normal chicken. That's where I'm going.
What grocery store are you guys going to?
Well, what's up with you guys? This is just JB.
You're
Mitch,
in Pennsylvania. I mean, you're both there. Something's going on there, man.
Don't worry about the grocery stores we have here in Pittsburgh. But that 10-cent chicken, woohoo, it's something else.
This is where John's mind went today, Mitch.
But you don't need to acquire Deshaun Watson. You can cut him. If you want to free up a spot, you can cut him. If you put him on the trade block for any third, probably not going to get accepted, even though there's a few people out there that are still like, oh yeah, I'll buy low. If you can't get a fourth, cut him. Or maybe for Dan, get Fab.
Hey, that's fair. For our listeners, if you looked at our show notes tonight, for every player we're analyzing, John has some amazing, credible analytics. But for Deshaun Watson, you'll just see something about Price Chopper in Pittsburgh. I can't quite explain it, but I like your thinking. I'm out on Watson, JB, for sure. I was before. I mean, here's a guy with multiple knee surgeries, now a third injury. He was playing terrible before the injury. I really hope Cleveland finds their way out of this, and I'm just, put themselves in the quarterback market for next year. Keep losing.
A really easy thing. Look, he's not going to start another NFL game. In my opinion, he's done being an NFL quarterback. I think it was pretty close to already happening this season without an injury. Now the injury just made the decision even easier for the Browns. Everyone's like, how are they going to get out of this? They're just going to draft a second or third round quarterback, play him, and they don't have to pay him anything, and then they could keep the contract there and still have a starting quarterback. This isn't this team is absolutely doomed. It's just no, they're not going to go out and try to get another free agent quarterback. They're just going to go draft a cheap one, and then they'll start him for 4 years, and then within 2, that Watson contract will be over and it'll be okay. I just don't see him playing. If I'm in a league and I need Fab, and someone offered me 30% Fab, I'm like, okay, Watson is yours.
Here, this is impromptu. I'm going to put you two on the spot, and you can both plead the fifth and not say a word, and we'll move on. Do either of you have thoughts that you want to share on the fact that Browns fans were cheering when he got hurt?
I'm completely okay talking about this. Dude, the NFL is a game that is paid by fans. It's paid by viewership. It is paid by sponsors. Fans are in the stadium paying to see the game. That's how the players get paid. If they want to boo, they can boo for whatever reason they want. Don't throw things on the field. Don't affect the game in any way besides cheering and booing. Players cannot tell fans, hey, cheer for us when we're good, but when we're bad, you're not allowed to boo us.
I'm talking more about cheering when he got injured.
I know, I'm getting there.
Oh.
But it's the weakest thing ever, right? So players, you're out there, you're on the field, the fans can do whatever they want because they pay the money to get there. NFL games are extremely expensive. So if someone who has been accused of over 20 sexual assault has 20 sexual assault claims against them and settled, if fans want to cheer when that dude gets injured, so be it. Look, I didn't feel bad when I saw it, and I don't mind saying it.
Yeah, I think there's a big difference of cheering on an injury, because I know Mitch is a dude of high moral, ethical compass. He keeps me in line if I'm getting out of it. But when I think it does come with someone with the history that he does, criminal history, you're going to get that. You get a guy who's got this bad background. He's not the same Deshaun Watson personality-wise that he was in Houston, doing all that charity work. I don't know what happened with this guy, but he went down this wrong end, and his production's as bad as the off-field stuff. So I think it's just a very unique situation. And again, where Cleveland was going at the end of the game, talking about his high moral grounds and compass and stand-up behavior on and off the field. I'm like, what are they talking about? Like, at least if they took some ownership and say, hey, the guy's trying to change his life around. But we never even heard Deshaun Watson have any remorse. So I know we're getting down a little rabbit hole that's not normally, dynasty analytical football, but there's a lot of red flags here and no production either.
No, I'll say this real quick. This isn't anything against the Cleveland franchise either. Like, they made the decision, whether it was right, wrong, or indifferent. You could have your take on that, right? But my hope is they get a really good young quarterback in that could lead this team to some wins. Like, this isn't me hating on the franchise, hating on the fans, hating on the players that are still on the field, no matter what they said. Like, I want every team to score a lot of points. That's all I care about. Like, I want them all to score 45 points. Deshaun Watson isn't doing that. I honestly don't think Winston's going to do it. I think that offense is in for a tough run. I think Chubb is actually a decent get right now because I think you get him for really cheap. And he had a lot of use in his first game back. So if that's the case, my biggest takeaway here is you should go out and acquire Njoku. And Nick Chubb isn't a bad guy to get if you're willing just to go out and pay. I mean, I probably wouldn't give a second for him at this point, unless it's like it would have to be like a 16-team league second sort of thing. But I'd give a third for him. I'm willing to trade a younger player that I don't really like for him. I'm willing to go get those two pieces. Jerry Jeudy's done. I don't think he's any good. And so, as far as the franchise goes, hopefully they go and draft someone young, and then all of a sudden we could see improvements there.
Yeah, DTR, he's banged up a little bit. There's talks, he would get the start if he's healthy. And I said in the Discord, if he gets a start, it's going to be his last. Yeah. If he looks anything like he did when he came in relief, holy cow. But I did want to bring up, and again, it's not dynasty fantasy football related, but, despite being the dynasty crazies that we are, there are human elements to all of this. I wanted your honest opinion, because you hear people, Watson's doing all this off the field. And then it's like, you don't cheer injuries. So people have their thoughts, and I wanted to get yours. And Mitch did not mince words. And I appreciate that.
I'm good with it.
I appreciate that. Well, you know what I'm good with, guys? I'm good with Russell Wilson back in the kitchen, baby. He's cooking again. Holy moly. Did you see those two short throws to in the flat that Russ had last night?
I honestly missed the game last night, to be honest.
The first quarter and a half. Oh my God. He threw the ball into the ground 7-8 yards away. And I'm texting my family. I'm like, I always hated Russ. I said Fields should have been in here. And then he starts cooking again, guys. What are your thoughts here, Mitch? We'll get to trades in a minute, but Russell Wilson, do you think it's just kind of a one-off situation here? Do you think he can continue this? What are your thoughts?
No, I think he had a great game, right? It was great. It was against the 2-4 Jets at the time, now the 2-5 Jets. It was a good game. He ended up was he the number one overall quarterback? He was top 5 for sure.
He was number one. And especially the first half, it was ugly. It kind of, I think completion percentage was 67% in the second half. So it was ugly at times, but he definitely mellowed out a little bit.
I think he is a fine starting quarterback. Am I willing to go out and acquire him? No, because I think I could get someone else that I believe in for next year and the year after, right? I'm not saying Russell can still be the starter there next year easily. His contract can do it, right? But I think I could go out and get, just looking at your tiers, John, it's, let's say David Carr, or
David Carr drink.
Yeah. Oh man, we were good for years.
Broke
the streak.
There's a callback. So Derek Carr, right? I mean, you want Derek Carr or Russ Wilson? I actually think points per game wise, it's extremely close. But I actually think Carr is going to be a starter next year. To a Russ could be, should be, might be, maybe is the starter. So I'll just take the guys like that. But if you tell me, what about Daniel Jones? I'll take Russ over Daniel Jones, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Where 2 weeks ago, Daniel Jones is all of a sudden the guy like, hey, you can move a first for him.
Well, that offensive line was hot garbage. They had the injury.
It's always
like,
hot garbage. Yeah.
But it was really bad. And then they tried to unlock the offense with Drew Lock, and that really panned out well. One thing I want to say before I turn it over to Dan for his thoughts from a dynasty perspective, and just if we expect Russ to continue this at least throughout 2024. There was a conversation in the Game Day channel this morning that carried over from last night, and the comment basically was that George Pickens really helped out Russell Wilson, and that kind of led to that strong fantasy performance. And I said, you look at Russell Wilson and what he did this past Monday. It's, we talk about Brandon Aiyuk. I said he's kind of what he's always been outside of the 1 year. This is what Russell Wilson is. He's a deep ball specialist, the moon ball guy. Whenever he had that more positive public perception and he wasn't seen as such a cringy guy with his Subway commercials and Mr. Unlimited, all that weird stuff going on, nobody ever said, oh, DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett made Russell Wilson look good. They worked well with each other. And I really think that's what we could have here with George Pickens and Russell Wilson. Are there going to be rough patches, especially if this offensive line doesn't hold up? Yeah. But I think it's very unfair to look at what Russell Wilson did in his first game back here in week 7 and say, well, it was really only because of George Pickens. He put Pickens and Freiermuth at times and Van Jefferson in positions to be successful. So that's my thought on it. I think it's a two-way street. It's not a highway and a bike path, in the words of Vince Vaughn from Couples Retreat. Terrible movie, but I love it.
And John is not biased here at all on any of this, just so everybody knows.
Well, no, but I still have like Russell Wilson, very late second value. Like I am not advocating for going out and paying a somewhat inflated price for him. So I want to make that very clear. But I just think it's a slight to Russell Wilson to say that was only because like he put Pickens in a far better, and you can tell I've been stewing on this all day, guys.
You're ready.
JB, how many shares do you have of your 100 dynasty teams of Russ?
80.
I'm at 29% exposure.
That's a high percentage for all the teams you have.
And I know that offhand because I pulled it up in the midst of that conversation. And like, it was a completely fair comment by the Discord member, like completely fair comment, because I'm not sure, that's probably a majority of folks thinking that Pickens really, made him look competent.
You see how JB's just glowing tonight, Mitch? The hair's a little fancier, the smile's a little bigger. I give him a few weeks and he's going to roll up that sleeve and there's going to be a Russ Wilson tattoo under there. I see where we're going.
What do you mean? I have it on my stomach right now.
That's a future episode. Bonus content after, maybe.
Dynasty Theory After Dark. All right, so before we get into the trades, Dan, what are your thoughts on Russ from a rest of season perspective? And is there anything left in the tank, do you think, beyond 2024?
So I'll keep it simple. Like, I would just keep in context for anybody who's like on that high that JB is from last night, that we're not surprised Russ could throw better than Fields. So there was a higher expectation, I think, even going into the game, and he showed that. He gets George Pickens involved. So I think George Pickens is the biggest beneficiary of this trade. We saw that last night. But, I think the Jets had no tape on the Steelers, Russ. The Jets are a hot mess. So I think some of that gets a little inflated. Like, I think there'll be some tough matchups that Russ will have his struggles moving forward. But regardless, he can win with the Steelers. It's a well-coached team. There's talent around him. I think he does enough for your dynasty quarterback room that, but I guess, Mitch, you're comparing him to Derek Carr. I think he's right there. Like, there's a role as your quarterback 2 on your roster in dynasty. He's probably a little bit more stable than the Danny Dimes, where we're just not sure what that's going to be next year. I think like Steelers are in contention, so they're not getting anywhere sniffing near a draft pick. and they've got some investment in him. So I think you're good with Russ for the rest of this year, most likely next year, and then you kind of just see how things go.
Well, we'll see if he gets extended, right? Like the contract's up here, so that is wishful thinking. We'll see if he wants to play on $1 million contract again next year. That would be delightful. But all right, Mitch, let's start with you. I kind of went
real quick before we get into him. The only thing I'm going to say is I know we're going to see it on Twitter this week. George Pickens isn't a buy low. There's no buy low that's going to happen with George Pickens after this. His price is already really high, and it's just getting higher now. Anyone who had Pickens loves Pickens. We've talked about this many times before. So, I know we're going to see it. You just can't go out and buy low before Pickens takes off, right? I mean, it's a buy high, and it's going to stay high for the rest of the season now.
That's kind of exactly my thought when you mentioned that you want to talk about Drake May, which maybe we'll get to that in the future.
We probably won't get there.
But I told you that was there was something I was going to bring up, and it's if you had Drake May, this is what you're waiting for. So there's no buy low. You got to buy high if you want them. So maybe next week we'll go back to a buy high episode.
A side note before I lose the thought, because I will lose it, this Chargers game tonight, Simi Fehoko and Jalen Reagor are some of the main guys catching the ball tonight. Rager's the leading receiver right now. Man, this is bad, but that's it. I just had to throw that out there.
Side note on the side note, I am so tired of 2 Monday night games. Stop taking games. What'd you say?
I hate them.
I was ready to fight you because I thought you were going to say you liked it. Stop taking games away from the 1 and 4 o'clock slate. I don't want to see kicker interviews on Red Zone. No offense, Linda. No offense. All right. So we're going from highest to lowest here.
Mm-hmm.
Mitch, 12-team Superflex. Russ for a 26 first.
Russ. Just kidding. 26 first.
I was like, what?
I was waiting for the facial expression. There wasn't anything there for a second. I got worried.
If my quarterback 2 is at risk,
nope.
You don't consider Russ. If you don't have a quarterback 2, you lost Deshaun Watson this week. You have no quarterback 2. This is a 25 first. This is a 26 first.
How much more expensive is a Geno Smith?
I honestly was thinking Geno Smith.
I'd rather pay a little bit more for Geno Smith than ever give up a first for Russ.
That's true. Someone's always willing. It was 26 first, so I wasn't sure.
All right. Well, I couldn't let it slide. I couldn't
market check there on the late.
All right, Mitch. Russ for a 25 second and 25 fourth 12-team Superflex.
Team dependent on that one. If I need a quarterback, then I'm okay with Russ. If I don't need a quarterback, I'm taking that second.
So you pass up the Pittsburgh Steelers starting quarterback who just had a good game for a second?
If it's Russell Wilson, yes. Yes, I will.
Man, that's harsh. JB, tiebreaker?
If contending, and that's my 25 second, and let's say I have Jaden Daniels, Justin Herbert, and I had Deshaun Watson, let's say, I would make that move for us.
Yeah, that's fair if you're contending.
All right. So yeah, so we have that's 2.5 votes for Russ on that one. So then Mitch, Russ or a 27 second?
Russ.
27 seconds.
I would assume if you're moving a 27 second. Oh, this is a 14-team league too.
Especially if I have to pay for my 27 in that. That could change things if I have to pay 2 years ahead in order to move my second to get Russ. I might keep my second at that point.
I would assume if you're liquidating 2027 picks, it's because you're in contention and you need that.
And you're willing to orphan. Yeah.
I'll get out of here. All right. Then can we get a strong vote for Russ on this one, Mitch? Again, these are trades that have gone through on dynastydaddy.com. Russ for Michael Wilson in a 25 third 12-team Superflex.
Russ.
We did it. All right. So going through some of the news and takeaways from week 7 here, but then we do have 2 dynasty buys. Let's see if we can do this rather quickly. Mitch, you have one guy that you want to get out there and buy right now.
It's Xavier Worthy. He went out and had John was nice enough to do the notes for me because I was at work all day. I'm like, dude, I don't have time to get all the stats. So he went out there and grabbed for me, which is awesome. I mean, his air yard share is horrible. It's 13%. Is that really 0.731 yards per route run? That is terrible.
And what do I have in parentheses after?
Vomit. Yeah, I mean, it's awful. And he's 11 the target share at 30%. But that's the thing. Like, he's going to have a lot of targets in this offense. Mahomes hasn't looked good. Mahomes, I guarantee we would like Worthy a lot more if Mahomes would have connected on that 60-yard pass they were trying to throw him yesterday. It didn't happen. That's what happens with these guys. But I do think Worthy is going to get more and more and more involved as the season comes. Maybe he's not a great play week 8, week 9, week 10. But when the playoffs start, I want Worthy on my teams because I do think he is going to be a league winner. I've said this for a couple weeks before when we were talking about him, and now I'm willing to go out and get him because he hasn't performed enough. So I really think you could get him not at an elevated cost because he didn't go boom right after Rashee Rice was out, right? So I do think it's a really good chance to go out and get him now.
Yeah, Dan and I think we're a little skeptical here. But this has been a player, full disclosure, and anybody that's paying attention, this has been a player that Mitch and I don't want to say we've butted heads on, but we've disagreed on Xavier Worthy.
Yes.
All
the way back to the early draft process.
Weeks 1 through 3, Xavier Worthy had 2 receptions per game. In every game, not per game, in every game. Weeks 4 through 6, he's had 3 receptions in every game. So next week, do you think we could see 4 receptions?
Yeah, what happens if he gets 4 receptions, but he gets 80 yards off of it because one of them's 30-yard pass? Then all of a sudden, it's just trickling up. Look, these rookies get better later in the year. That has been proven over and over and over again. You don't want rookies for the first 6 weeks of the season. You want the rookies for the fantasy playoffs, especially good rookies on what. Oh, look. I know we don't love this offense. Patrick Mahomes is a good quarterback. He's even good for fantasy. I don't care what anybody says, right? But no, I'm just playing around with that. But, dude, get Worthy on your teams. Who else are they going to pass to? Juju's out for like the next 2 weeks.
I haven't really seen a difference between McCole Hardman or Xavier Worthy personally watching these games right now. McCole actually looks a little better than him personally, but I know it's, he's got a little more experience, so. I played basketball with him, so I know him a little bit. But
get out of here. I did want to look, Mitch jumped off the feed here.
I'm done.
Mitch, you talked about the 13% air yard share. Not great when you look at it from a usage perspective and the different metrics and variables that kind of roll up to the Trinity score. But that kind of ties into, and I thought this was very interesting because I was digging into Mahomes a little bit. He's at 5.6 air yards per attempt. Okay. Every single season, excluding 2018, because he played 1 game, he has decreased. So starting in 2019, this is air yards per attempt, 8.8, then 8.4, then 7.3, then 7.2, then 6.5, 5.6 now. Next year, we're probably in the 4s, guys. By the time he retires, everything's behind the line of scrimmage. Like, that's the rate this is going. But hopefully they open things up a little bit. Dan, I want to start with you. Xavier Worthy in a 25-second or Devontae Adams, 12-team Superflex, start 9, half PPR.
Hey, JB, my rosters are contending, and I need a little production beyond McCole Hardman, who I could pick up on waivers. So I'm going to go with Devontae Adams.
Because Adams has been great. Yeah, I'm going to go Worthy in the 25-second here.
He looked good in that New York game, Adams. They need a little time,
With go ahead. You're good. Go.
No. I was just going to say to our viewers, drop in the comment. Let us know. Drop in the comment section if you are looking to acquire Xavier Worthy, if you're Team Mitch, or if you're not with him, you're against him.
It's just if you have Adams, you can't get a first for him. You will never. He could go and get 300 yards for the next 2 games. You're not going to get a first for him. And so you're getting a 25-second already. Let's just say it's mid. And Adams is probably worth the 202 or the 203. Worthy is such a good add on top of that I think it's worthy about every single time.
It's a start 9 league though. So like I'd just rather Adams in that start 9.
All right. Next one, Worthy or Addison? Mitch?
Worthy.
Addison.
Mitch? Worthy and a 25-second or DK Metcalf?
DK Metcalf by a lot, to be honest.
Whew, I was a little worried with you, Mitch.
Worthy and Bucky or a 26 first?
Worthy.
14-team Superflex PPR.
Worthy. And it's because of that 14 team.
I want the 26 first. I want to get a stud in 26. And like if it was a running back that I believed in, I wasn't high on Bucky going into this season. Worthy's like a nothing. So give me that 26 first.
So Russ over Worthy and Bucky. Just going back to the previous one, we're talking about Russ and a 26 first.
If you need a starting quarterback at Superflex, I have a chance to get a Steelers quarterback for a receiver that's not playing, and
I'm just keeping track.
a second.
Keeping track for all of you listeners at home. All right. And then Xavier Worthy or the 25 first, 12-team Superflex PPR.
25 first.
Thank you.
You know.
I agree there. Now, I'm going to go through this very quickly. A guy that I think we should all be looking to acquire, Romeo Doubs. I don't want to say I had him in green on the Dynasty Theory tiers throughout the entire offseason, and I was called out on it in our Discord, but I had him in green on the Dynasty Theory tiers for the entire offseason. Last 2 weeks, and we always talk about a couple weeks, looking at trends. Over the last 2 weeks, he's a top 10 wide receiver based on PPR average per game. Trinity score wide receiver 14, 47% air yard share. That's 7th over the last 2 weeks. 21% target share, 2.3 yards per route run. Maybe this is a squeaky wheel gets the grease, but this dude came back from his 1-game suspension and last 2 games have been great. So Romeo Doubs, I think he is still, I know Mitch is team Jaden Reed. I know that. And he's rubbed off on me. Jaden Reed, he's been moving up the tiers for me as well. But if you're looking for a cheaper option, I still think you can go out and get Romeo Doubs at a very reasonable price. And it's a situation where, I don't see a reason that he can't still contribute on a weekly basis. Any objections? Nope.
Yeah, I was with you, I think, earlier in the season on Doubs. If you may recall on an episode of Dynasty Theory, I talked about how he just destroyed the Dallas secondary last offseason and looked good.
Everybody destroys the Dallas secondary.
But you've been a little hard on my Cowboys in the Discord and on the show, JB. I have some feelings, some, not many, but some. But no, I like him, and I like Jaden Reed too. And I think the challenging part of Green Bay is there's a lot of guys that are going to get distributed those targets, but I think either him or Reed is going to be the number one on most weeks. And I think there's going to be some weeks where it's all going to come together and they're both going to produce. But he's the best route runner on that team. And, he had some conviction in himself there. He didn't handle it the right way. There was that squeaky wheel narrative, but boy, did he back it up when he returned.
All right, Mitch, Romeo Doubs in a 25-second or Stephon Diggs, 12-team Superflex, start 9.5 PPR.
Doubs in the 25-second. Same reason as Worthy over Adams with the
Dan just looked disgusted.
I know. Worthy's no Doubs. And I had Doubs ahead of Diggs before the season. So you want to give me a second with Doubs, who I do like and is a good receiver. I'll take Doubs in the second.
Oh, I thought Dan was going to go the other way.
I thought he was too.
I thought he was going to reach through that screen and put a whooping on Mitch live on, well, not live, but, a recorded here on Dynasty Theory. All right, Mitch, Romeo Doubs for Zamir White. Ooh, Zamir. And Zach Moss, 12-team Superflex, start 10.5 PPR.
Doubs.
That's right, Mitch. Even Dobby likes Doubs, Mitch. Remember Dobby? Dobby likes Doubs. Oh, this is perfect tonight.
Dobby.
And then Doubs are a 26-second, start 10.5 PPR, 12-team.
Doubs.
Smash Doubs.
All right. So these trades, again, I think there was an opportunity to go out and acquire. I'm going to be seeing what I can do here once all the MFL leagues roll over here this week, and then I can go out and hopefully get some things done. I think next week we'll have a little bit more time. Hopefully, knock on wood, no big injuries. Mitch was putting some voodoo magic on the Dallas Cowboys in our group chat earlier today.
I just wasn't putting it on the Lions. It just happened to be a Cowboy. It's completely
That
different.
was wrong. That was just wrong.
So yeah, next week maybe we can discuss some buy highs. If you have any that you're looking at, maybe drop it in the comments here as well. All right, Dan, we skipped it last week. You were very upset with me. Final thoughts for the 265th time. What do you got for our Dynasty Theory listeners?
Man, you built that up a little too much because last week I was like loaded with the final thoughts. This week a little less, but hey, we're just back to our normal schedule. No more London games, so you don't have to worry about managing those in your lineups. And I think these two Monday nighters should hopefully go away. JB, just take a little analyzation of your dynasty rosters there right now. We're 7 weeks in. We have a good idea whether we're contending or pretending. Hop in the Discord, talk to Mitch, John, and I. Let's just see if Xavier Worthy, Romeo Doubs, who the best pick is. We all know it's Doubs.
You okay, John?
Analyzation is actually a word. I thought
I never doubted.
Right there with hopium, baby. Right there with hopium, JB.
That's why I was like, analyzation. All right. So Mitch, final thoughts. I know you said pre-show you didn't really have one, but were you able to maybe get some analyzation here throughout the episode and get something together?
Well, honestly, I had one. And then we started top out analyzation, and then hopium, and then copium went in my head. And now I have no recollection of what I was actually going to say. But it was a good one. But yeah, it's gone.
It's past.
Well, maybe you could get it for an opening thought for next week's show.
Oh, I know what it was. Oh, listen to Winning the Week. It is the sit start show. I did that on purpose, John. That we do on YouTube every Sunday. It starts at 11 a.m. Eastern. We're on there for an hour and a half every day. We do, at least 100 sit start questions a week. We do underdog picks. We talk a little DFS, not a whole bunch, but it's really good to get your head in the game for what's going to happen on Sunday. So please listen. We had a ton of people watching this past week, and we just want to continue to grow. So check it out, please, on the YouTube feed.
Yep. That's only on the DD Fantasy Football YouTube channel. Like Mitch said, 11 a.m. Eastern time every Sunday during the season. And it's a fast-paced, fun show. We get really in depth with the Dynasty discussions here on Dynasty Theory. But on that, it's boom, boom, boom. It's rapid fire. We get some trade questions every once in a while. We just get some random general fantasy football questions. Like somebody had asked about the auto sub feature and just what our thoughts were on that. So it's a fun show. It's a hodgepodge of things, but primarily focused on everybody's start sit questions. For Mitch Sorensen, Dan Lamagna, I'm John Bauer. Make sure you hit that subscribe button to DD Fantasy Football. Hit that like button on this video. It helps us out. And then use code THEORY. Click the link below. If you want to check out the Trinity Tool, the War Machine, get in the Discord. It is a fantastic community. I don't know if I said I'm John Bauer, but we'll catch everybody next week.